All right, so we're diving into some pretty intense stuff today, folks, the LA fires. And you specifically wanted to hear more about the firefighters battling these things. So you sent over some sources, and well, we've both gone through them pretty thoroughly.
Yeah.
What jumped out at you the most?
You know what I think the thing that really hits home when you look at these sources is just how massive these fires actually are.
Yeah.
It's not, a couple little brush fires here and there. We're talking about like these giant infernos just ripping across huge, huge pieces of land. And, obviously drought conditions aren't helping.
Right.
And those Santa Ana winds, man, those are
Oh, yeah.
those are a whole other beast.
Yeah, those winds seem to be a real game changer.
Absolutely. They're whipping these flames all over the place, pushing them across canyons and ravines.
Yeah.
It's creating these crazy firestorms that are just so tough to contain and so unpredictable.
Yeah, totally. And speaking of tough to contain, the sources mentioned Mount Lee, the Hollywood sign, that the firefighters managed to protect that.
Yeah.
I mean, that must have been an insane fight.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, first of all, you've got the iconic nature of that location.
Right.
We all know that sign. But it's also like on super steep terrain, the access routes are just terrible.
Yeah.
So for the firefighters to get in there and do what they needed to do, it was a huge challenge. They had to use hand crews to cut those fire breaks, those strips of land where they clear out all the vegetation to try and stop the fire from spreading. And they were doing targeted airdrops too.
Wow.
Dropping water and fire retardant from planes and helicopters to try and knock those flames back.
Yeah, it sounds like a constant race against time with these things.
It really is.
And there's this one thing that I was reading about in the sources. Controlled burns. What are those all about? I'm not really sure I get it.
Oh yeah, controlled burns. So it's actually a super important strategy, especially in places where you've got a ton of dry brush and trees. Basically, firefighters will go out and they'll start a small fire on purpose.
Wait, they start fires?
They do, but it's a controlled fire. They know exactly what they're doing.
Okay.
And the idea is that this controlled fire will burn up all the fuel in a certain area ahead of the main wildfire. So by the time that wildfire gets there, there's nothing left for it to burn. It's like starving it out.
Huh.
It sounds kind of crazy, fighting fire with fire, but it really works. It creates a buffer zone and helps to slow the spread.
Wow. That's wild. And what really stuck with me reading through all this was, just thinking about the firefighters themselves.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they're working nonstop in this incredible heat, the smoke, the danger.
Yeah, it's brutal, both physically and mentally,
Yeah.
Imagine facing down a wall of flames that's taller than a building.
Oh, my gosh.
The heat is just radiating off those flames, and it's so intense it could melt metal.
Wow.
And these guys, after they work a 12-hour shift, they might get a couple hours sleep, and then boom, they're right back out there battling those flames again.
Man, I can't even imagine.
It takes a toll.
Yeah. So with all that pressure on them, I mean, lives, homes, everything's at stake. Did the sources talk at all about how they decide where to send resources?
Oh, yeah. Resource allocation's a huge deal. And honestly, with fires this big, things are stretched pretty thin.
Right.
They're pulling in crews and equipment from all over the state, even from neighboring states.
Wow.
But one source talked about this worry that fatigue is setting in because the firefighters are being pushed so hard.
Right.
And that's a real concern,
Yeah. It brings up the point that even though we hear about some successes, these fires aren't over yet. Not by a long shot.
Nope. And the whole situation's constantly shifting. The weather, the wind, even the terrain itself, it all plays a part in how these fires behave. The firefighters have to adapt on the fly,
Okay.
making these really tough decisions with hardly any time to think.
So much pressure.
Yeah.
So I guess the big question is, what do you really want our listener to take away from all this? After going through all these sources, what's the one thing that stood out to you?
For me, it's about understanding that fighting wildfires, it's not simple. It's not just about putting out flames. It's about understanding how fire works, how it moves, how it reacts to different things. It's about managing resources and making sure you have enough people and equipment in the right places. And it's about being flexible and adaptable because with wildfires, things change constantly.
Right.
And of course, it's about the incredible dedication of those firefighters out there. They're putting their lives on the line every single day.
Absolutely. They're true heroes. A huge thank you to all of them for their bravery and their sacrifice. And to you listening, we've talked a lot about the challenges these firefighters are facing.
Yeah.
But as wildfires become more and more common, more and more intense, What do you think the future holds? What new technologies, what new strategies do we need to be thinking about? Just something to think about as we all keep those firefighters and those affected communities in our thoughts.